Hello readers, I'm David Reader and today we're reviewing The Hot War, Armistice, written by Turtledove in 2017. So this is the third volume in the Hot War trilogy, where the Cold War and Korean War got hot, which involved nukes. And this book occurs between May 1952 to December 1952. And a large part of this book is us seeing how the armistice, the ceasefire, is implemented between the Soviet Union and the USA, or the allies in China. So the main character, of course, you could say is Harry Truman, and he offers peace status quo terms to the Soviet Union and China that we can have a ceasefire, make peace, and we can return to the status quo before the Korean War, so get back to the regular Cold War borders. Stalin doesn't agree to this. So, Bruce McNulty, the American pilot whose girlfriend Daisy Baxton is dead, he went to her funeral and then he was sent to drop an H-bomb on Stalin. And before doing that he had to violate Finnish airspace, but let me tell you, it felt a bit oddly satisfying to learn that Stalin was killed by an H-bomb. We get to see how Radio Moscow reacts to that. After that you get Beria, who gets into power in the Soviet Union. Harry Truman offers the same term. Eventually, Beria is replaced by Molotov, and he and Molotov meet in Paris to negotiate peace terms. And during this time, the fighting has kind of calmed down, so they've stopped using airplanes. During the negotiations, they agreed they will not drop any more nuclear bombs on continued wars, and that they will return to the previous borders. So, for example, there have been uprisings in the Eastern Bloc, in the Soviet Union, in Poland, in the Baltic states, in Czechoslovakia and Hungary, and the Soviet Union is not allowed to use nuclear bombs, only conventional weapons, while the USA is not allowed to use nuclear weapons against China or North Korea, which it is still at war against. So yeah, the Soviet Union in a large part of the book at war with Eastern Europe, while you have the USA at war with China and North Korea. And this becomes the Peace of Paris, a new Treaty of Versailles, oddly. And during this time, Harry Truman also got some guidance from George Kennan on how he should deal with this. And his Secretary of Defense now, as Marshall is dead, is Omar Bradley. But the war continues on with China until eventually the Chinese reach out to Yugoslavia, and indirectly through them they start negotiating peace with the Americans, and they agree on a ceasefire that makes the North Koreans and Chinese stop fighting also. So the war eventually ends, and a large part of the book is actually seeing the Soviets crushing the uprisings against them. But before that could happen, you had Kate Curtis in Korea getting shot and losing his leg, and when he returns to America, he decides to bring along this Korean that he has befriended. He makes him his adopted son, oddly enough, even if there's only a difference of a few years. And they return to America. His family kind of accepts the new Korean, and he starts getting to learn to use a stomp leg or whatever it is they used back in the day. The guy who dropped the H-bomb on Stalin, Bruce McNulty, he's feeling grief and pain of having dropped all of these A-bombs and that Daisy Baxton is dead. He resigns from the Air Force, returns to America, gets a job where he gets to douse plants or something like that. In the gulags, you have Louisa Hosel, who's doing her gulag work. She refuses to open her legs to get easier work, while her friend Trudel Bachmann actually does so, and there's an irony in this. So the Soviets at the ceasefire agreed to let out the gulag workers, and the Germans are sent back to West Germany, and it is there that Louisa Hosel discovers that her Gustav is dead, while Trudel has her husband Max alive, and Louisa takes some sick pleasure out of telling Max Bachmann that her wife cheated on him to get more food in the gulag. And of course Louisa Hosel is a bit more thinner than Trudel Bachmann. And Max Bachmann has fought alongside Rolf Mellin during this time, and after a ceasefire, Rolf Mellin goes on to deactivate some mines from the last war, and he is blown up by one of them. So that's one of the two kills in this book. So we get the perspective of Max Bachmann returning from the war, having to give back his rifle to the government, and he sees that his shop is destroyed, but his house remains, kind of, at least. He kind of half forgives Trudel Bachmann for screwing some guard at the gulag, since he understands that war makes people do crazy stuff, and Louisa Hosel is disappointed that Max Bachmann kind of reconciles with his wife. You've got Istvan Solowitz, the Hungarian prisoner of war in France. Well, he is sent by a Jewish American officer over to the USA as he has collaborated with them, and he is allowed to set up a life there. He is actually sent to the Blue Front shop or something like that, where he gets to become a trucker alongside Aaron Finch. And this is when I kind of realized, oh, Aaron Finch is actually in his 50s while Istvan Solowitz is in his early 20s, I think. But they get along well. Aaron Finch brings him along to his family one time, and when you've got these communist relatives who speak well of Hungary and ask how it was there, well, let's say that Istvan Solowitz told them an uncomfortable truth that Horthy was better than the communists under Rakosi, and those communist relatives are disappointed with that and shocked. And Aaron Finch gets a pleasure from having actually someone from a communist country showing how horrible it is. Vasily Yasevich, he is caught by the MGB for having smuggled that German Gulag worker. So she's sent back to the Gulag. The Jew that he put her with is also sent to the Gulag. But since he's kind of friends with an MGB guy, he gets a choice. Join the Red Army as you never served in it previously, or go to the Gulag. And of course Vasily Yasevich picks Red Army. But he doesn't really feel comfortable fighting for the Reds. Remember, he's a White Russian instead of a Red Russian. And he's fighting against the Poles, and eventually he gets captured. He collaborates with them. He's kind of part of the Polish resistance. Goes to Warsaw. One of his Polish friends is shot. Goes to some pharmacy, does some work there. Gets very friendly with the girl there called Ewa. When the Russians come in and blow stuff up, they fall in love kind of, and you see that he's starting a relationship. So the Soviets are in now, back to occupying things. He cannot escape anymore from these red bastards, but now he has a girlfriend at least. A Polish one. You've also got the Ukrainian soldier Ihor Shevchenko fighting for the Red Army. He is fighting Poles also, and then eventually he is allowed to get a transfer back to Kiev after the ceasefire, and he becomes an instructor there, and he gets to see his wife again and say hello to the Kolchos. You've got a couple other Soviets also. You have Konstantin Morozov, who's this tank commander. He regularly talks with Juris Egims, this Latvian guy who doesn't really like the Soviet Union, but he's a damn good gunner. And eventually when he sees the uprising in Latvia, Yuri Egims deserts, and Konstantin Morozov gets a really shitty gunner. So he's not happy with that. All of his previously good crewmen are dead, so yeah. Goes through a lot of crews, and now he has a bad gunner, and eventually his tank blows up. He gets out of it and gets into a shootout with a Lithuanian, and both he and the Lithuanian die. And you've also got the pilot, Boris Gribkov. He's blowing up some stuff for the Soviet Union. Eventually his plane is shot down and some Latvians capture him. And we see that it is commanded by Lieutenant Juris Egims. So that's interesting. So the Latvian actually succeeded in joining the bandits in Latvia to fight for their independence. And the story actually ends with Aaron Finch celebrating New Year with his family. So that's the story. So how would I rate the third volume in the Hot War, Armistice? I would give it a 9 out of 10. It is my favorite in the trilogy. Of course, it shows several times how bad communists are in this book. That's one thing I've appreciated in this novel. The characters are quite interesting. It's actually interesting to see how they evolve. How Louise Hosel kind of becomes a bitter woman with her husband dead and having been in the Gulag. How Istvan Solowitz goes from a Hungarian soldier to now an American. You have Aaron Finch moving along. By the way, Istvan Solowitz goes and takes night classes. He also kind of gets a girlfriend and he's learning English, so that works out well. So yeah, you get a lot of perspectives. The piece is interesting that it's in two parts. First with the Soviets and then with the Chinese. Harry Truman accepts that he made a mistake. One weird thing he does actually is that he delays the election by 1 year, so it will be in 1953 instead of 1952, so he gets 1 more year as president and the next president will only get 3 years. And overall, great book. A lot of interesting things. I really appreciated the characters. There are some things that gave me some kind of sick enjoyment reading in this book. I mean, it was fun to read Stalin getting blown up by an H-bomb. And it's interesting to read about the uprisings in Eastern Europe against the Soviets, even though they are eventually crushed down by them. And it's good what happened to that SS bastard, Rolf Mehel, that he got blown up. So yeah, great book. 9 out of 10. You should definitely read the Hot War trilogy if you're interested in the Cold War or how it could have gone hot. Or interested in the post-World War II culture in different countries such as Hungary, such as Germany, such as the USA, Soviet Union. Yeah, good trilogy overall and a great book. 9 out of 10. So definitely read it, I would say. So this was the Avid Reader's review of the third volume in the Hot War, Armistice, written by Harry Turtledove in 2017. It got a 9 out of 10. I hope you readers enjoyed this book review, and I will see you readers next time.